Welcome back. You're listening to another episode of the What is Humans podcast with Shane Strunk and Dennis Kaluba. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at What is Humans podcast and on TikTok at What is Humans podcast. Today, we are discussing creating meaning. Enjoy.
Hey, welcome. You're on the What is Humans podcast. If you're new to the show, this podcast is a conversational podcast where Dennis, myself, Shane, discuss everyday life. We pick topics around mental, physical, and spiritual health, and hopefully relating our lives so you can find some meaning in your lives. And most importantly, we're experts in almost nothing. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. What are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about specifically discipline and how we create meaning in the everyday life. So creating meaning.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing kind of where this topic came out of was this idea that within, life itself, and whether that's, as a kid in high school and college, there's homework. As an adult, you're going to your job or your career, and then you do a lot of the same habits over and over again. And I think that when we're excited about things, it can be easier to kind of recognize where it holds meaning or it holds joy, for us, if that's a passion outside of work, or maybe that is work. I think that a lot of us in our own lives, including myself, get caught up in doing the same things all the time, and then that novelty being stripped, going away, and then kind of leaving us with this perpetual round and round we go that seems, very void of meaning.
Yeah, void of meaning, trivial, less exciting, as that novelty that maybe some very meaningful things could have. So I think kind of the question is like asking what really is meaning for us. I feel like it could be very dependent, depending on where you are, something could be very meaningful to me as a kid, playing with a certain toy, to where I am today, putting meaning and values in my everyday life. So I think identifying what meaning is for the both of us, maybe we can look at creating meaning kind of in that trivial kind of everyday life too. Yeah,
sure. And I think that one place to kind of start, and I think that one saying that comes up a lot, at least that's what I think of, especially in adult life, is a means to an end. And a lot of times, it's that people go to work in things that they don't necessarily love or find meaning in order to provide for themselves or others, right? Their family, their children, etc. And it's just something that's kind of a perpetual loop of doing the same things over and over again to pay the bills, to roof over your head, etc. My question for you is, how do we take something like that and create meaning? Or do we find things outside of our, whatever that is for you, find meaning in those to kind of balance that, that lever?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to say, like, in the moment. Looking at, like, past experiences, I feel like is such, like, a clear example of, like, how to see how it did actually have meaning in my life. So it's like, let's just make up an example of, taking this class, at school, felt like it was a waste of time. It was a means to an end. It was just checking off the box for my whatever degree. You can look back at that time and maybe there was something that it definitely taught you. Maybe it was someone you met in that class. It was the fact that you hate, this subject, or it pushed you in a direction to end up where you are today. So I think the certainty and clarity of being exactly where you are today, of something that seems very trivial and, not important or lack of meaning, that's something that happened in the past, actually was very impactful in creating who you are today. So how do we go about putting meaning kind of in the present? I think it's something we'll have to explore, but looking at, a relationship that you thought was a waste of time, or a job, or a career, or time that you thought was wasted. We could probably look back and identify that time was actually teaching you something, but we have to figure out what you learned from that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Looking backwards or having that reflection period, we often find, meaning at times when we, we're lost or maybe unsure of what this all meant. I think that one thing that we've talked about in past episodes is this idea of, why we're here and where we're going. And it's almost good to kind of do that reassessment, I think, daily, to remind yourself that whatever this thing that you're putting yourself through, whether that's physical fitness, spiritual, that's your work, there's a reason that you're doing it. Is there times where you found yourself in your own life that you've been doing things for no reason and you've stopped them, or you felt like you had no reasoning behind it and you had to take some time to be like, okay, this is why I'm doing that?
Yeah. I feel like we have to ask too, it's like, are we, subconsciously doing this thing, out of habit?
Yeah.
Or is it, something that we are putting at the top of our mind every single day of, I am choosing to do this out of something that, I'm driven to do. I want to accomplish. I want to get better at this thing.
Yeah.
Instead of just, oh, this came to me, I have to take care of this, or, oh, this is kind of what I've been doing and what I know.
Yeah.
This is my swim lane. This is my comfortability zone, so I'm going to keep doing what I know. So I think that's another thing we need to ask too.
Yeah, I think within my own life, the time that I know that I was most present and understood the meaning behind my actions daily was when, like I said, I kind of reminded myself often the importance of what I was doing. And I think that so often we get trapped into routines, like you mentioned, almost subconsciously, that we forget why we started or why we're doing that in the beginning. And I think that a lot of times we forget to reassess, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, a year in, and say, okay, is this still serving me? Or am I just giving myself towards something, an activity, a goal, etc., that no longer has meaning to me?
Has meaning to you. Yeah. I think it's like, if we go into something, a goal, a job, without a direction or without something that we're chasing or have a strong foundation of why we're doing it, I feel like it's going to be very, very difficult to show up every day and do the minute, trivial details of that bigger goal. So I think that we have to reassess, like you said, kind of our why, or why we first did this, and track progress. But I feel like so often I've just done things just to join things, or maybe it's me avoiding things, maybe it's me running away from things. So maybe it's a practice that I need to look at too. It's like, can I figure out my why? Can I figure out a direction and a goal in a career or in a hobby or in a dream, instead of it being just doing it because my friends are doing it, doing it because it's what I know.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest piece, I think, that we'll get into more with the how, but you mentioned it a little bit on identifying the why or the goal with everything that you start or you begin. I think that it needs to be bigger as well. It's kind of interesting dissecting what that why is for people and creating meaning. I think that it's based on your experiences and what you've, kind of been through. But a lot of times just surviving or just paying the bills, if we're talking about work, isn't enough to keep the day, interesting and meaningful, right? It's almost this pressure that you have to remind yourself of. You have to constantly be like, okay, the reason I do this is to do this. And when we forget, that's when these days can kind of lump together of, okay, why am I even here? What am I building towards? What's my why within this? And if you don't have one, it makes it so hard to go in and day out and be like, okay, I guess I'll just do the same thing I did yesterday for what end?
Yeah, very true. Where does putting time's perspective into this why,
Yeah.
or maybe it's even death, like keeping that kind of top of mind, where can that be helpful for us when looking at our whys, looking at figuring out direction for ourselves, to create meaning, in our days?
Yeah, I mean, we have been talking about this a lot separately, not really a part of this episode, but, about move fast and break things. And you mentioned, this idea of time. And I think whether it's hobbies, passions, it's our work, and having, kind of this one life idea top of mind, it allows us to say, hey, every day is important and should have meaning. If you're not moving forward towards whatever goal is giving you life, fulfilling you, you need to be reassessing, like, okay, is this the thing? And if it's not, right, I kind of mentioned off the top of, is there something outside of your 9 to 5 or outside of your hobbies that does give you that fire, that you have an idea of, okay, I'm building towards this.
Yeah.
My work, fuels the financial side to fuel my passion or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too. It's like, how do we find that like fire, that interest or curiosity to start fueling that? So I think that time and death and like keeping that top of mind of like the perfect day, perfect scenario for you to start a hobby or for you to learn this new skill, isn't just going to just show up, on your doorstep. It's, you have to take tiny steps towards that. You have to be moving towards that if you're going to be able to pursue and chase down that goal. It's, I feel like so often I will just be stagnated from, or being afraid to begin, just because the goal may seem so daunting, or that maybe I don't have meaning in this work. But I think by keeping that idea of time and death, top of mind, and with a strong foundation of a why, can help push me to start taking action.
Yeah, and I think that, like you mentioned, pushing yourself to start taking action. A lot of people, I feel like, use something like maybe growing up, getting married, or having a child as, oh wow, I'm having to provide for somebody, I'm having to take care of somebody. Now it's, the meaning is very clear.
Yeah,
I have to make money and accelerate in my vertical job in order to take care of another human being.
Yeah,
I encourage myself, and we're working on this, to be thinking about that so far ahead, to light that fire on yourself, so that maybe you don't get to that point where something is kind of, the meaning is brought to you.
Yeah.
Right? Before you're thinking of, okay, creating meaning outside of just responsibility coming on your front door.
Yeah. Describe that meaning coming to you concept versus kind of building up that meaning in the everyday. Can you describe that a little further?
I just think, like, especially when it comes to responsibilities, whether that's children, it's maybe taking care of your parents, somebody gets sick or something like that.
It's marriage, it's a promotion or taking a new job. Those
are almost forces that are brought to your front door. Okay, you are now responsible for this with no heads up.
Yeah.
And then meaning becomes very easy. It's like, oh, I'm trying to keep somebody alive.
Yeah.
Or I'm trying, this work is being forced upon me. I have to do it right now. As opposed to maybe times when you have less responsibility, being so aware of places that you can add meaning, that when it comes along later, it's very easy to
Yes, I love that. It's like, how do you create meaning in taking care of yourself so well? Just being disciplined in what can I control every single day? Yeah. Things that I can impact. If I can just put meaning in my day of taking care of my health, maybe it's the job I have now, maybe it's not something I love, or it's the hobby or interest or the few friends, whatever it is. If I can create meaning in those things, when bigger responsibilities come, like you said, it's just going to be so much easier to tackle those.
Yeah, completely. So how do we begin to kind of build and create that meaning on a daily basis, as opposed to the meaning coming to us?
Yeah, I think that kind of that reminder or that kind of reflection on your direction. I think that if we can think about time, think about death, think about what you want from your life. Like, if we can ask yourself why, I think that is a very great starting point to start putting meaning, in the minuscule items of your day.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that one thing that gets lost a lot on this why or this goal is that it has to be personal to you. Like a lot of people can put kind of, general goals and I'm victim of this as well, saying, well, I want to lose weight. Does that, that's like a classic goal.
Sure.
Is it meaningful to you though?
Yeah.
If you can add the pros that will come with that, right? Maybe it's you want to lose weight to hang out with your friends more, to be more confident. Then it becomes much more, okay, now I know why I'm in the gym.
Yeah.
When you have something that's very like broad, after the third week, you're like, okay, I don't really care that much.
Right. It's like putting a goal that maybe your friend has or someone on social media has, taken it for your own. Maybe it's not truly what you need for yourself.
Yeah.
And maybe the goal is health or fitness related, but maybe the goal should be, I just want to feel better and be optimal for myself instead of putting a metric or a number on that goal just because someone else did it.
Yeah.
You are on your own path. You have to be responsible for what you're responsible for. So it's like putting meaning in something that would be rewarding for you, like your health.
Yes.
Is a great example of creating meaning.
Yeah, completely. So once we kind of have that overarching why or that, that goal that's personal to us, what's the next step as far as, implementing that, on a daily basis when things can get, if it's a 3-month goal, it's a yearly goal, day 265.
Yeah. I think you were saying something about how it's easy to forget kind of why you began something, or, it's why is this important? Like, what is it I'm doing today? I think you need to find perspective in the micro within the macro. It's like, how do you identify that something as little as, making your bed every morning or doing the dishes or folding laundry, things that seem very minimal, how important it is in creating success for that bigger goal. Yeah. So I think you need to have that big why and then understand and create meaning between the two.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we'd specifically go about doing that, but I think we need to look at the micro and create connections with that macro why.
No, yeah, I think that's great. I think that when we have a disconnect between the two, a lot of those daily tasks that do build up and equate to a much larger behavior, it can feel like beating your head against the wall, right? Like, okay, I'm doing this over and over and over again, to what end?
Yeah.
And so it reminds me of when we talked about planning a lot. So that you can have an overarching goal, an overarching why.
Sure.
Then you have to kind of work backwards in order to understand how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
And so once you have that why or that goal in step one, kind of working backwards and trickling down to, okay, this is why I'm going to make the smoothie, or this is why I'm going to, stay 10 minutes late at work to get better.
Yeah.
Then it becomes much more easy of, okay, now I understand how that applies to the next step. This step applies to that step, which ultimately gets me to the yearly big goal.
Love that. That's a very tactical why or how.
Yeah.
That I think that will be great for me to practice.
Yeah.
So I think a third that I was thinking of,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you too, but like, where does say I'm going throughout my week or my day, like I had a good week so far, I go out and see friends, plans change, I miss some goals, things that I was supposed to do I don't get to. I just know how difficult it is to get back on track with a goal. Where does failure and mistakes and I guess grace come into creating meaning, in our everyday life?
Yeah, I think that this is kind of funny because I think if step two was, this microcosm of, how does one, habit affect the bigger picture, this is almost a macro approach to mistakes are going to happen and they're almost a part of any goal or lofty, kind of thing that you're trying to tackle. So it's almost zooming out and saying, okay, in the grand scheme of things over the course of this year, if I wasn't able to stay the extra 20 minutes, I wasn't able to hit the gym 7 days a week or whatever your goal is this week. It's the summation of the whole and not so much pressure on one day that you almost implode with anxiety and fear of missing.
It's the summation of the whole, in that it's not going to be a direct, clear path of every single day I'm going to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
You have to be adaptable. You have to be willing to change. Things will come up that will mess with some of your routines.
Yeah.
You're going to miss things. You're going to mess up. You're going to be too lazy to do something. If you can just remind yourself that it's the summation of the efforts, that's how you can create meaning.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point to make, because when we set out on this episode itself, it's about, we talked about creating meaning on these daily trivial talks, but the weight, the weight of, if you put so much pressure on daily activities, it can break you the same way as if you don't have meaning behind it, right?
It's that other side of that coin.
It's having this balance of, hey, this is important today, but also I'm not going to put so much pressure on myself that I feel paralyzed to make a mistake, mess up, over the course of the whole year, month, whatever.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about this today? Why was this important to create meaning?
I think personally the reason that it kind of came up for me was in different aspects of my life, it can eat away at me or become frustrating in that it feels like the days are just continuous. Same thing, you're doing it again. And I think that this is a similar feeling that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that I think that I was missing and gained from this conversation was in that first step of identifying the why, and then two, almost reminding myself daily of, hey, you're not doing this for no reason.
Right.
There's a reason that we're putting in this work, that we're working towards this. And that's my biggest why, and my biggest leaving this conversation is I have to practice that step of reminding myself that this isn't for nothing.
Yes.
There is a reason I'm doing this,
Yeah. Mine's very similar. I think just like speaking with you and friends, like being young, like after school, like post grad, it was so hard to know what is right. Are you in the right career? It's like there's so many questions that I've asked myself. My friends ask. People are asking of, how do I know this? What is right? How do I know that I'm on the right path? And I think that kind of wherever you are is where you're probably supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I need that reminder of it is okay to be where you are. It is very important to ask these questions to figure out your why and your direction. That way you can create those meaning in your trivial tasks throughout your day.
Yeah.
So that was a reminder for me.
No, makes complete sense. So let's do a little bit of a recap. Today we talked about creating meaning. We really talked about how our daily tasks and these trivial pursuits can seem completely meaningless when we don't have a big goal, a why behind why we're starting, why this matters to us, and really about bringing meaning sooner rather than later, so that meaning and those responsibilities don't come knocking on our front door of, hey, now you need to wake up and figure
Start
it out.
Working.
Yeah, exactly.
Our hows was step one was to ask yourself, why you're doing this. Have a direction. If you have that why foundation, it's a lot easier to be driven and chase down that dream. Our second was to connect the micro daily activities with that why. By doing that, you'll just be able to understand that there is reason for doing this thing. And our third was kind of looking at grace. You have to understand that it's the summation of the efforts, that you will mess up. There will be change of plans. You won't have a clear path ahead. And by having that grace, you'll be able to have meaning, in that micro, the daily activities, but have grace when things don't go well.
Completely. And then we really just talked about the whys. I talked about the, going forward, the constant reminder of the stuff that I'm doing today has meaning because it's adding towards this goal or this, big plan. And I don't need to beat myself up when, I feel like I don't remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. Mine was, it's a question that I think many people ask, and I ask myself, am I doing the right things? Am I making the right decisions?
Yeah.
And I think it's a reminder that wherever I am today is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And by asking myself why, I am responsible and capable, to make decisions for myself moving forward.
Completely.
And I think that wraps another week of
What is Humans?
Thanks
for
guys.
listening.